A major development tonight in the Flint water crisis criminal case. Today, charges were dropped.
State Attorney General Dana Nessel has declared the criminal case in the Flint water crisis officially closed.
7 people were charged by the Attorney General in the Flint water crisis.
Flint's former mayor, Karen Weaver, reacting today to the news that she says is downright stunning.
Justice for Flint also does not mean that the people responsible, those all the way up to the governor's office who were in charge, who allowed this and made this happen, walk away free with 6-figure salaries.
I'm just going to read one line of this opinion. It's actually from Justice Bernstein, who wrote separately, but basically said the Flint water crisis stands as one of this country's greatest betrayals of citizens by their government.
My son, Declan, was born with lead in his blood.
Both of my kids had high levels of lead. My son was struggling in school, had been suspended over 50 times.
Our water is not usable, so why should I be paying for it?
My bill is $1,983.59.
I'm worried about chloroform. I'm worried about acetone.
The only thing that's getting filtered in Flint now are our voices.
Months and months we've been drinking this water and we've had no idea what we was drinking.
The governor has taken this city and strangled it. What matters right now is this, that Flint River right there is still right there, okay? And those people that are victims of what was played on them are still victims. The 7,000 babies are still brain damaged, except now they're about 7 or 8 years old. It doesn't matter who got away with shit and who planned it and who let it happen. You fucked up. The fact of the matter is now. What do you do about it now? You left a lot of people dead and laying in the street, and you still got people dead and laying in the street. Excuse my French.
What is happening here in Genesee County, and is this cancer crisis connected to the water switch? Newly released data from the health department reveals cancer rates here significantly higher than anywhere else in the state of Michigan.
Year 10 of the water crisis, and my 8th year of covering this. I first went to Flint in 2016, and I guess we should start from the beginning. 3, 2, 1.
Breaking news tonight. It's a disaster.
The public health crisis.
Toxic water in Flint, Michigan.
The president today declaring a state of emergency.
It was beyond belief that children in Flint, Michigan are being poisoned.
What do we want? Clean water! What do we want? We need to get these pipes out of the ground! You ain't nothing but a paid government state!
The judge's ruling coming out early this afternoon, saying the indictments against those who were facing charges are now invalid.
We know that a crime has been committed in the city of Flint by those that were put there to protect and serve us. And yet we've had people die, people damaged, and a community that still has not recovered from this water crisis that was done to us.
Just a few weeks ago, I caught up with the AG, and I asked her what her message was to the people of Flint then.
Justice delayed is not always justice denied, and I know that the criminal staff that are working on this case continue to work tirelessly on this.
What is your message to Attorney General Dana Nessel? The Attorney General says she's not directly involved with the criminal investigation. It's under her watch.
And justice delayed has been justice denied. She was not truthful to the people of this city. She told us that they were going to have some criminal charges. They did not just charges, but convictions. She did not want people to get away with these crimes. And we see a misdemeanor is getting away with murder. I always talk about how to get away with murder. Ask Snyder, ask Nessel. They're all helping him do it.
Is Flint still experiencing a crisis?
Yes, Flint is still experiencing a crisis because it was never fixed. It was never completed. And one of the things we know is we always said Flint couldn't be made whole, but we were never given what we deserved to have as a result of what was done to us in the city of Flint.
I decided to come back for the 10th anniversary to talk to residents to get the actual truth. Is this a recovery? Or is this still a crisis? Because if you listen to the media, this is something from the past that's improving. I talked to at least 10 residents in a few days, and you learn real quickly, this is not something in the past that they're recovering from. They are still actively suffering. They are still dealing with an active crisis. They have not gotten clean water, they have not gotten free health care, and they've gotten zero justice criminally.
My youngest daughter suffers from memory loss. She can't remember things so when schooling is a very big issue for her. And then Declan, he has a hard time emotionally and keeping his just trying to stay calm. He's not a bad kid. He just can't stay calm. He has these outbursts of emotions and kind of can't handle that. A regular, you can't have that right now, you can have it later, and then all this other deny. You can't help but think that they're trying to get away with downright murder, not attempted manslaughter, manslaughter. It seems like murder. It does not seem like they accidentally did this.
10 years later, this is my 20th trip here. And I have probably spent, hundreds of hours reading through documents, interviewing people on the record, off the record, talking to sources. My head could explode from how much time I've gone through this. Hey folks, Jordan. It is my video diary. I can't get into full details yet, but I might have uncovered some major, capital C level corruption here. That if I can get enough people on the record, might prove that, let's just say, the numbers they've been using to declare the water safe here in Flint, corrupt. Not true. Cooked. Fake. Throw in your adjective. So we're going to stay here for another few days, and frankly, I'll probably be just knocking on doors.
Today is day 3,287 since Flint has had clean and safe water. This ticks on. We're already talking about what to do for the 10-year in a year, because it doesn't seem like things are going to be any different. However, with all of the problems, the poisonings, the sufferings, the deaths, and the trauma, the layered ongoing trauma, there have been wins because the Flint residents are strong, because we are smart and we are resilient, and we're not taking this for an answer. Whatever this is, insert an expletive, whatever word you want to call this. We're not taking this. We're not taking this bad water. We're not taking this $12, this little piecemeals of things. We're going to keep fighting for what we deserve to make Flint whole, because only the residents of Flint know what justice means for us and what we need to live safe and properly respectfully, in our own homes.
To me, this is the biggest government cover-up I have ever seen. This is the biggest government cover-up of the 21st century. I've only been alive 37 years, but I don't know of any other situation that involved a governor of a major American state, all his top officials, the health department, the environmental department, the treasury department, local city officials of a major American city of 100,000 people, local county officials, the EPA, add in Wall Street banks that were involved with this, ignoring major blinking red lights, ignoring major stop signs. Then once they drove 100 miles an hour past the blinking lights, past the stop signs, then covered up the car crash in real time. I don't know how you call that anything other than the biggest government cover-up of the 21st century. Frankly, I think this makes Watergate look like a picnic.
So in January of 2015, when we started What Are You Fighting For, I needed to come up with a Twitter handle. So we were going through the list and everything, and we settled on Flintgate. And the reasoning was because Watergate was taken. But now, 9 years after that, 10 years into this, it's definitely not Watergate, because Watergate people were held accountable. A president stepped down. Charges were held. People actually were held responsible, and nobody was actually harmed. Nobody was sick. So whatever you want to call Watergate times a million, because there's the initial water switch, then there's the cover-up.
Flint City officials insist Flint River water is good enough to drink, but it's been causing problems with issues at General Motors.
General Motors turning the tap off to the Flint River.
General Motors is making the best decision that they can. The Flint River is in fantastic shape.
Then there's the criminal cases being torpedoed, in my opinion, on purpose.
The judge threw out criminal charges against former state and city officials for their roles in the Flint water crisis.
So nobody had to face accountability. And then there's this, letting people just die.
Right when the Legionnaires' epidemic starts, the pneumonia death rate in Genesee goes up. It's likely that the Legionnaires' outbreak was bigger than that reported by official authorities.
What do you call that? What do you call a decade of repeated Watergates, repeated times that they're actually trying to, how I feel, kill us off, but while profiting and walking away scot-free? We're supposed to be in America, supposed to be, the land of opportunity, but the only opportunity I'm seeing is that if you are a wealthy white politician, or if you're a bank or an investor, you can kill off an entire community quickly or slowly. And walk away. So whatever the stronger word, this should be the real Watergate, because it's Watergate that was used as a tool to kill us. But again, Watergate's weak compared to what's happened here in Flint.
I was at a conference, the People's Summit, covering a progressive conference kind of during the Bernie wave. I kind of knew about Flint like everybody else. I saw, on TV, the long lines for water and babies with rashes. I was horrified, but I was on the road covering Bernie rallies, Trump rallies, the madness of the 2016 campaign. A woman came up to me, maybe in her 20s, wearing a Flint Lives Matter shirt, and I was running around. I didn't have a lot of time, but she said, "Can you talk for a minute?" Basically, she told me that this is a horrible disaster that's being swept under the rug, and now the media had abandoned it. And it just stuck with me. It was still the presidential campaign, but I pushed my boss at the time to send me there because I wanted to check it out for myself. And I went there, I believe, July 2016 for the first time. I just interviewed resident after resident for the first time. Basically, it was as if you're, on an island where a plane just crashed and people are deserted, but there's zero rescue choppers, and it's just an apocalyptic disaster zone, and nobody was doing anything.
We can't move forward because we're still in a crisis. I mean, we have people getting their water shut off, a mass amount of people getting water shut offs. On top of that, we're paying the highest water rates in the nation, and so...
I want to stop you right there. Let that sink in. They're paying the highest water rates in the country for water they cannot consume safely.
Are the people paying right now in Flint for water they cannot wash in and cannot use and cannot drink? That is poisoning them. That's not American. Are they paying those bills?
I had a rental that we had redone that had been emptied for 8 months, okay? We got a water bill on it back in 2016 for $120.38. No one was living in that house.
We still have to pay water bills, and they overrating on the charges with the water.
A lot of people are getting letters threatening to take their homes if they don't pay. Have you guys gotten those?
Yep. I know a couple of people that done got some foreclosed, about to get their home foreclosed because they got water bills at $7,000, $8,000.
I got a notice yesterday, dated March the 5th. Current penalty has been charged on the past due balance, and your account is now included on the shut-off list.
This right here, you're not gonna take my property for this stinking ass water.
You want to shut off people's water and then put tax liens on their houses where they still can't even use the water. We are worse off now than we were back then. We didn't have shut-offs, we didn't have tax liens.
I just had to get my house out of foreclosure. Yes, I am one of the ones that, because of the water, then you turn around and put another water lien on our house.
$164 is 2 of us. Come on. You know.
You're not using it for anything other than like flushing the toilet, cooking.
That's right. I'm not drinking it. I'm not cooking with it either.
To me, they're, what do you call it? Genociding this area.
Ethnic cleansing?
Yes. That's what I feel. Because there's nothing around here. You know, they're taking all the stores away that we have to go way away to go to the store.
They want us out of here. They want to make it a college town, and we are not a fool. We know it. Go up and down the street. Look over there. We have a forest in the daggum city. It was houses there. We don't own that. Land Bank and other places own that.
Everywhere you look, it's a field. There's no longer houses around here. You know what I'm talking about? In every neighborhood, there's no houses. Ain't no kids outside playing. They scared. They don't know what to do. Everybody lost. Everybody in the house. Like, man, look, I'm not going out there. I don't know what they gonna bring. You know what I mean? It's just like I said, we can't drink our water. We can't go outside and play. We ain't got no parks. We gotta go. Everything we do is out of state. They made it that way. We ain't got no elementary schools. We ain't got no high schools. Only thing they care about is the colleges. You know what I mean? It can be fixed, but it's like, well, we ain't gonna shine no light on no dark situation. We just gonna leave it dark.
They released me from ICU and CCU straight home, and I told them I can't breathe. Well, within 24 hours, I was being rushed by an ambulance to early and complete respiratory failure. They told me if I didn't allow them to do this, I'd be dead by morning. Then I got trach too high, and it will never heal now. And if scar tissue forms, then I have to be retrached. And I've been no energy. I literally have lived in my bedroom. I've lived in my home for a long time, but there's 14 stairs to the upstairs bathroom, 14 down. And someone didn't want to show this was me before the water. This was 3 years ago. Now look. Look at my face, the swelling. I'm talking good today, but that's the grace of God. They wouldn't release my medical records even to me. And when they finally did a year later to my physician, the cover page said, do not release the client unless you contact this number first, which is a legal firm. Oh yeah, for medical malpractice. So, and they told me they could never identify the bacteria, even Henry Ford. They ended up calling it a yeast infection. They got me trached, got my throat scraped, and put me in this position. But it's sad that our own country would allow them to do this to people and then act like it's all about money. There ain't enough money in the world to give me back my life or my mother or my sister. But it would be nice if they could at least put reverse osmosis in homeowners and homes so we have clean water. I bathe. This is what happens. Still to this day.
Well, the people, the city and the state say the water's fine now.
Yeah, just like they said it was safe to switch it Because that's all been proven that they didn't know what the heck they were talking about. Well, they knew, but they just lied so somebody could line their pockets.
Wasn't it when you approached Governor Whitmer for more state funding for residents, interior plumbing? You know, again, residents, the busted pipes inside residents' homes has not been replaced, so lead and other heavy metals are leaching out.
Right.
What did she say?
Flint fatigue. So the first time...
She said, who had Flint fatigue?
Lansing people. And it was bad because we were made promises by the previous administration and then the current one. So the first time we were supposed to start getting pipes and fixtures. They're going to do 12,000 homes. Wasn't enough, but it was going to be the start. 4,000 each year for 3 years. And I'm thinking, so we're going to get some more, but you all get started. They did it for 1 year.
So to be clear, the Democrat governor of Flint,
this was the Republican.
To be clear, the Democrat governor of Michigan, who ran in part on fixing the injustice and delivering for Flint, she told you, I can't help you with that money.
Right, because I brought that back up when she got in office. This is what we need to have happen.
But she told you, sorry.
People have Flint fatigue. And I thought, Flint fatigue? We've got it. We're the ones fatigued.
Arthur Woodson is worried. Cancer rates here in his hometown of Flint are soaring. The disease taking the lives of his loved ones.
Very concerning. My aunt passed away. She had 5 different cancers. My cousin passed away. She had 3 different cancers. Here in Flint, it's like every other day you hearing somebody either diagnosed with multiple myeloma. Matter of fact, what got me started was my friend was diagnosed with multiple myeloma November 2016. I delivered some water to her, and she said, man, my friend across the street got multiple myeloma. Because I was telling her how rare it is. I said, your friend got multiple myeloma. So I started knocking on the doors. In 1 block radius, I found 6 multiple myeloma. Now this is 1 in every 100,000. How is it possible, if it's rare, for 6 people in 1 block radius to have multiple myeloma?
And this was about 2 years after the water switch?
Correct. Just recently I found 7 other people on Brownell with kidney cancer and like 7 different cancers, 5 different cancers. I mean, it's rapid on just 1 street.
These aren't all elderly people. We're talking people in their 40s, 50s.
We're talking about 8 years old.
Oh, wow.
I'm talking about, I know a young girl have breast cancer, 8 years old. Then my friend, his daughter had leukemia. And 2013, I was helping a veteran that was stationed down in Camp Lejeune. Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, Marine base. They had contaminated water with total trihallomethanes, TTHMs. And he was stationed there from 1968 to 1970, 2 years. Well, in 1972, he was found that he had leukemia. So 1985, ATSDR started doing a study all the way up until 2014. And they found that TTHM causes certain cancers.
TTHM, or trihalomethanes, are a group of chemical compounds that can be found in our drinking water. Studies have shown that prolonged exposure to high TTHM levels may lead to an increased risk of certain cancers, liver and kidney issues, and potential developmental effects in unborn babies.
And TTHMs were the byproducts that were found in Flint River water.
Correct, and we had for like 15 months. Well, they came out with an advisory in 2014. Well, 2015, January 3rd, 2015, where if you weighed 154 pounds, drank 2 liters of water a day at 0.80 parts per billion, you runs the possibility of having cancer. Well, in that study from the ATSDR, it stated multiple myeloma, leukemia, non-Hodgkin's, breast cancer, kidney cancer, renal failure, breast cancer, kidney cancer. I mean, it's a list of them. And then neurobehavioral also, miscarriages, all those different things. And depending on your size, you can develop cancer quicker because it gets in the fatty cell. Dr. Verhoeven, who is an epidemiologist, she's New York Dean, New York University. She found that cancer, she told me, brain, throat, and stomach was up 300 to 500%. And once she wrote that letter, the county wrote a letter, county commissioners wrote a letter to MDHHS. They tried to say wasn't nothing wrong in the report.
To be clear, an NYU epidemiologist who looked into the cancer rates and studied it, she found stomach, throat, and brain
right,
was up 300 to 500% after the water switch?
Correct.
Wow.
Correct. I mean, you can't make these numbers up. I mean, I gave you the report. The state, we got the feasibility study. They didn't want the people who I had to put in, they didn't know that they was putting in for it. So they put in for it. So after RFP came out, after they opened it up, they started adding different things to it. And they started saying, well, you got to do this, you got to do that. And then they only gave them $500,000 to do it, where it takes like $2 million to do it. So they don't really want people to know that cancer came from the water. So when we went to them, it was supposed to be just about the water. But now they saying we're gonna add GM, we're gonna have air pollution, we're gonna add this, we're gonna add that. So that by adding all this, it takes away and dilute if it was the water or not, which they know it's the water. So they don't really want people to know that cancer came from the water. Cancer is totally different than Flint. It's more aggressive. You can be diagnosed in January, and by June, you got stage 4 and you're dead. I mean, my friend's sister was diagnosed last year in August of multiple myeloma, and she died the day before Thanksgiving. Former Mayor Woodrow Stanley, he was diagnosed last year in March with throat cancer, and he died in April. So, you know, my aunt, she was diagnosed in 2019, and she died in 2020.
I have a friend of mine, Lori, who was a bass player and amazing. She ended up developing this weird blood cancer. And so they sent her to cancer treatment centers in Chicago, and they found out she had Legionnaires. Nobody here would even diagnose it, and said that she just had a respiratory thing. So then she was fighting cancer and picked up Legionnaires while she was here. 58% increase in miscarriage and fetal death. The 12% decrease in fertility. You know, the things that the little girls that are never going to even want to have kids because nobody can tell us if our eggs are poisoned, even at their young ages. Nobody can tell us about that contamination, even though with women, the heavy metals and a lot of those contaminants are stored in our bones, soft tissue, brains, things, you know, like that, but also our reproductive organs, women's reproductive organs. So we get to carry all that. So there's a lot of endometrial cancers, a lot of ovarian cancers. We lost Teresa to ovarian cancer and uterine cancers. A lot of young women having emergency hysterectomies. We keep losing people. We just lost Eric Mays.
I've been in this water crisis from the beginning. People done died. My mother done died. I represent 1/9 of the city of Flint, about 11,000 folks. But when we have meetings and protests, it ain't been no 2,000-3,000 folks out here like it should be.
You don't have to show out in front of them. Yes, you did. When I tell you I'll leave, I'll leave. You don't have to grab me, put my hands on me. If you was at home, had your water shut off at the basement, then use a drop, you're gonna be charged $57 or so a month. And we believe it's wrong. We believe it should be fixed. And I'm telling you, because you asked for some folks to respond to you, that's the short version. We can fix it. It can be fixed. These folks got to do their job. But if I didn't start speaking, They sit up here like dummies and wouldn't respond. This is the city I was born in. I'm not going away because y'all want to be disrespectful. I'm not going nowhere.
Mr. Mays?
Yes, ma'am.
We're done.
You want to be respected, you better respect me when you talk. I ain't
you are
studying your
absolutely
petty
right.
rules. Well,
You are
thank
absolutely
now
right.
get on track and talk to me like you got some sense when I say point of order, anything else. I'm going to talk black, white. I'm going to talk like Gleason was talking black. And Miss Galloway, you ain't going to let them mess up these meetings and then leave with their cronies. I'm old now. I have to get up every hour, half hour, on the hour. And when I come back, they call themselves refusing to let me in the meeting and have the police arrest me for returning to my elected seat.
We lost a fighter for the North End.
He spoke the truth about what's going on down here at the City Hall, and he spoke his mind. He believed in the city of Flint, and we loved him very much.
People who live in Flint say Councilman Eric Mays fought for the people. He was the voice during the water crisis, holding meetings and listening to people. When it was time to fill out the paperwork for the water settlement, Eric Mays helped bring attorneys to explain what people needed to do.
You saying you don't want to approve 300,000 because it's close to an election? You want people to die? If you allow her to make personal attacks, I'm going to go up one side and down the other. She out of order. Who's passing this stuff out? Is this the clerk or Miss Fields?
It's coming from Miss Fields.
Every week we get a ton of, we done killed 5 trees fooling with Miss Fields and this stuff. It's your ignorant, but don't get beside yourself, Mr. Chairman. If he gonna holler tell me to shut up, you better give him his warning.
I gave you yours.
Give him his. If you gonna discriminate, you gonna let the white man running for mayor holler across and tell this black man to shut up.
I don't want to hear
So when he get loud, I'm gonna get louder. When they go low, I go lower. See, I want to make it to heaven. I try my best to tell the truth. People don't like my style, how I talk, my delivery, but you ain't catching me in half-truths and lies. Not running no municipal government.
We've lost people like Tony Palladino. How do we get back in the fight without them? And maybe it wasn't the water directly. Maybe it was their mental health, maybe it breaking down, or their physical health, or their immune systems breaking down. We can't fight things off, like not even normal colds. We had a 12.5% case fatality rate with COVID, highest in the world, and in order to solve this, they just changed the way the numbers were reported. And now if you go to our county health department, there's no COVID numbers on there at all. You can't get the data.
This is something that people are concerned about because they see their friends, their family members, their loved ones being diagnosed with cancer, and it seems to be a lot more prevalent than you would expect. You hear about a lot more of your neighbors having cancer than you would expect.
Kaylee Blaney is with the county health department. She's pushing for a deep dive, a study to determine why the rates are in fact higher.
So you have a mayor, Sheldon Neely, who has said the water is safe to drink. He cites the state of Michigan's numbers. They don't point out that we broke a couple years ago that Governor Snyder's administration cheated on the water testing blatantly. They went around and they literally were running people's water, not the night before, the day of, right before taking lead and copper samples, completely against federal drinking water regulations. And what do you know? When you run the water right before taking a sample, you flush out a lot of lead, copper, and other things.
We got tested like that. They come in and said, hey, this is how you do it. We didn't know any better. Serious. And I was with Mark Edwards and doing all this stuff. I didn't know any better. You guys got to run the water. We'll run the water. We'll call it good.
But after they changed the rule, saying you cannot flush the water, you cannot run the water for 6 hours before you test, they were still, MDEQ was still going around going in and testing people's water when they're not supposed to, and telling the residents to flush the water for 2 or 3 minutes before you put your jar underneath it.
Did they come in and test themselves, or they just gave you the bottle to do it yourself?
No, they tested.
Okay. Department of Environmental Quality.
Yeah, they was here like maybe 5 times.
Was it just the kitchen, the bathroom too?
The kitchen.
Just the kitchen.
Okay. And when they did it, do you remember if they turned the water on and took the sample right away, or did they let it run
They
first?
let it run a while.
What's a while? How long?
Oh man, I don't know. They just said they had to let it run enough for the distance between here and from the road to the house. And
Yeah.
For whatever reason, then do it. So I don't know more than that.
That's the bullshit they've been telling people.
Oh, can you say bullshit? Yeah, I was thinking that all along.
The folks that came in the first place, were they the Corps people with the vests?
They had the vest.
Were you watching them when they did it?
Yes, of course I did.
Now, when they came in, did they test just your kitchen or other rooms too?
Just the kitchen.
And did you see whether at first did they turn the water on and put the...
They turned on the water and let it run.
How long?
Oh, approximately 3 minutes.
Did you know that the EPA regulation is that it has to be stagnant for 6 hours?
I understand the EPA. In other words, this is what I want to share with you. I'm not ignorant at all.
Now, the first time they came...
Which one? Which? For the water?
DEQ, Corps, whoever was
right.
in the kitchen and testing.
Right.
They ran the water before putting the sample bottle
Of
in.
course.
You said for about 3 minutes.
Yes.
So right then and there...
It was broken.
It's falsified.
Right. It was a breach.
Now, what are your thoughts on the governor? Because
He's a pimp.
We just spoke with one resident.
He's a pimp.
Well, wait. Who literally had the lieutenant
I'll say it again. He's a pimp. A pimp is going to deny all truth as long as the pimp gets what he wants. They'll give you the illusion that they're doing something for you.
To you, the people of Flint, I say tonight, as I have before, I am sorry and I will fix it. You deserve to know that the buck stops here with me.
They were too technical. They followed literally the rules. They didn't use enough common sense.
Let me be blunt. This was a failure of government at all levels. I'm not going to point fingers or shift blame. There's plenty of that to share.
Snyder says the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality and the federal EPA didn't properly address the problem of lead-contaminated water when they learned about it early last year.
There were major failures here. And if you look at it, it was people being much too technical, not having a culture of asking the common sense questions. Well, that's a huge bureaucratic problem. And it's part of the problem with culture in government. There are a lot of wonderful people in government.
But you did appoint, though, these two environmental bureaucrats in Michigan, though, didn't you?
We had what we needed in place to prevent this from happening.
Really? But then why did it happen?
Because the state didn't implement and enforce appropriately.
It's something different to have this continuing dialogue to say it was solely us. This could have been stopped sooner if other people could have also spoken up.
I've had about enough of your false contrition and your phony apologies, and there you are, dripping with guilt, withdrawing your paycheck, hiring lawyers at the expense of the people, and doing your dead-level best to spread accountability to others and not being accountable. It's not appropriate. Pretty soon, we will have men who strike their wives saying, "I'm sorry, dear, but there were failures at all levels."
Flint residents are experiencing a lot more health issues than what you would get from lead in the water. I mean, the one reason I got involved with this so heavily was when my house tested at 151 parts per billion lead. They showed up at my door and they handed me a pamphlet and said, okay, it's safe to bathe in, before they even went in my house.
The hardest part has been trying to cook and bathe with the bottles of water, but trying to bathe my son with it was just, that was stressful.
I think today is day 1,555 since this has started. We also have way more than lead in our water. We know this. People have died from bacteria. The fact that people are saying this is worse than Flint, you can't say that because no one has the data. There's no epidemiological study. Nobody's doing tissue testing. Nobody's doing blood. Listen to the kids. The kids know better. The kids will straight out tell you what it's like to live here. They will start listing off contaminants. They will start telling you what's wrong.
A lot of this wasn't caused by lead. Okay, we had the high TTHMs. Did that cause all the rashes? We started finding bacteria in the water. Did that cause the health problems? Or was it the VOCs, the chemicals we were finding? We were finding, people didn't get all hysterical about lead in the water. They got hysterical about the brown water and what was happening to them in the bathtubs, in the showers. Nobody even considered lead to be the issue until Dr. Mona and Mark Edwards found the high levels of lead. I mean, we thought there was some, and we were told that didn't cause all the health issues. So to say it's safe, okay, yeah, there might be lead when you test a particular house. The lead levels might be okay, but is the other issues gone? Because there's still people experiencing those health issues.
They're just going in, people who don't know any better, people who don't know EPA regulations, people that are older, people that are younger, people that are poor, whatever. And they're just right in front of them cheating to try and get a lower number. So who the hell knows what the real numbers are? You always hear that talking point, well, like 3,000 other cities have worse numbers than Flint. I think what we're getting at here is we probably don't know the real lead levels in Flint because they've been flushing out the lead before they test. So.
My mom was on dialysis and everything, and when we first came to live here, she was okay. You know what I mean?
Is she living here?
No, she's passed now.
Yeah,
well, I'm saying, was she living here?
Yes.
Yeah.
So she was drinking the water.
And she believed all this. I said, don't believe what you're reading here. I said, don't believe none of this stuff. They just tell you it's just fine, and it's not just fine. And I was right.
But after we moved here, she started going into the hospital like
More
for almost
and
a
more.
whole month at a time.
Yeah.
She'd be gone, and then
She was
a
at
McLaren.
yeah.
And then right after they sent her home and they couldn't diagnose her, they purged all that water at McLaren. We seen it on the news like the next day or 2 days after.
So how are you to know whether she had Legionnaires or not?
Right.
Yep, exactly. And my friend Timmy, he was a veteran, but he couldn't make it down to the VA hospital, so they put him in McLaren in emergency. While he was there, he contracted some kind of virus while he was there, but they wouldn't tell him. They said it's a virus, but they wouldn't tell him what virus. I said, if they know it's a virus, they have to know what virus or the
They
definition.
wouldn't or they couldn't?
They said they couldn't tell him what virus he had.
His body bloated up, like his legs and stuff,
Huge.
you know what I mean? And then he was like, well, the doctor said there's nothing they can do for me. I'm just going to die.
And he did.
And that was on July 2nd, and he passed on July 6th.
How can you tell us the water's good? We just buried 4 more. This neighborhood alone, 4 streets deep, 3 streets wide. There's been 9 deaths in the last 2 years, mostly from cancer, brain aneurysms, or strokes.
Myself, I've come down with a seizure disorder.
Any family history of seizures, epilepsy?
Nothing.
And so when you know that pipes haven't been completed, you know, it hasn't happened. 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, our lead levels were going back up. We had some more cases of Legionnaires. We finally got some money for a cancer cluster study, but we know that this is a result of the water. We know that there is more to come as a result of the water. So what does that do to you mentally and emotionally and physically still? So yeah, we're still in a crisis. We haven't been through this yet. And that's a problem. And it's, you said 10 years later. 10 years later. And people aren't talking about it. They wanted it to be hushed up. So I'll tell you what, that's one of the things, I'm not in office, but that's one of the things I still do is go around and talk about what had happened in Flint and what is still happening in Flint and why this is so important for everybody else. That was one of the things, we talked about that a lot, is if they can do this to us and all eyes are on Flint and this happened to us, and things didn't get fixed, things didn't get addressed, things got covered up, no one's gotten any money, no one's been held responsible for this, and the only people that have suffered have been the people of the city of Flint. Everybody else better watch out that has these kinds of problems. When people have water that comes back with high lead levels in their home, we know that the in-home plumbing has been damaged. Right. We know that the fixtures have been damaged, hot water heaters have been damaged.
When you were mayor, we're begging multiple governors, Governor Snyder and then Governor Whitmer, for funding to replace residents' interior plumbing, the plumbing inside their home, which was also damaged by the Flint River.
Correct.
The main pipes were never replaced, and the interior pipes inside residents' homes weren't replaced. So even when they replace all the lead service lines, which they have not done 10 years later.
10 years later. You said it, I did beg for that. I begged for that because I said that is so important because we still don't have access to clean water when those things haven't been addressed.
I would say the quality of Flint water matches or exceeds most of the water in the state of Michigan and in the country right now. And what happens to it once it gets to the home is kind of out of our control.
They count on people not understanding basic plumbing like I didn't. And our laws are so outdated that the Safe Drinking Water Act and Lead and Copper Rule only cover the service line, which is, like you said, the distribution mains that come from the water treatment plant run under the streets. And then the service line connects that main to the house. And then inside the house is your internal plumbing, fixtures, and appliances. And until our lawsuit, the only part that was actually covered was the connection at the street. So the line leading up to the house wasn't even touched. And that's my lawsuit to replace the service lines. So we were able to fight that and get that put in, but that's still one piece. It's basically a straw. So it's basically a clean straw to pull in water that's already been contaminated by the mains. And then that's going to be pumped through the house where all of our plumbing inside of our house is still bad, still leaking. And then our fixtures, so our faucets and our appliances like our dishwashers, water heaters, washing machines are all corroded. So unless all of that is replaced, which is what the goal and what the ask and demand was, unless all of that is replaced, our water is never going to be safe for everybody. It's going to continue to fluctuate. It's going to continue to have problems. So to start off with, to replace everything that was damaged, so distribution mains, and this is without right-sizing the city, distribution mains, service lines, interior plumbing. The estimate was $1.5 billion. So that's with a B, to replace everything that was damaged. That's the price tag. And again, it would be a lot less if they shrunk down the infrastructure to make it make sense. But let's just start with the B there.
And the other problem a lot of people have is, that the reason why they don't want to drink the water, the pipes going into their homes they feel are affected, even those are right. Copper, not lead. And they have to get those fixed, but the state's not paying for those.
Back to that trust issue, too.
Exactly.
Okay, $1.5 billion is up here, chandelier. Mm-hmm. $170 million is here. That's what Congress gave Flint. We'll get to that in a minute. And it seems what you got is underneath the table.
It's on the floor, basically, down there. And we're still waiting for most of it. So basement, it would be in our basement right there because we're in the negative. So it's underground.
There's been reporting mysteriously millions of dollars were going to real estate developers, financial firms, law firms, technically some nonprofits, but yes, they were not really related to water relief. Let's just say there seems to be a bit of more than a bit of a boondoggle, and money that was meant for water relief being diverted to different pots of special interest.
Listen, so we finally got our hands on that report, and I'll never forget it because the way the report was written up, it was on the state website about where this money went. But if you just printed it out, you couldn't figure anything out. But I had somebody that was a tech person. And actually, it was my city administrator, Steve Branch. And he went in and he was able to print that report out in a way where we could see where these funds were going, a lot of them. There were some where it still would just say NA and you couldn't figure it out. But we saw where the money was going because, they were saying I had the money. That's what they said was I had the money. I'm like, I don't know where it is. But when we got that report, we sent it to the media. We called them. We said, we have found where this money is, where it went. And no story. I mean, they wouldn't even report it. You know when that story came out? The next year. It came out in January of the next year.
It took them 2 months to read a Excel sheet?
Yes.
Okay, so $170 million was approved by Congress, signed off by President Obama December of 2016. It got sent, because this is how federal money works, it never goes directly to a city, it has to go through a process. Went to the EPA, the EPA was to grant it to the state of Michigan, who then was supposed to send it to Flint. That's not how this worked. It got sent to the EPA, then all the EPA, once Trump got in office, all the EPA grants got frozen for a minute. And then the state lopped off $50 million right off the top, and that was to help fund a Medicaid, not Medicare, Medicaid expansion for children up to the age of 21. $20 million the state took back was a loan that they had given Flint to upgrade our water treatment plant. $20 million out of the $65 million that was required just to process water. So that was a loan. So they just paid themselves back. Instead of, they could have forgiven the loans, but they did not.
Well,
so
the
that's
state was the one that poisoned you.
Yes.
So they then, instead of forgiving the loan, paid themselves back?
Yes. For the loan that they shouldn't have given us in the first place, because we should never have had to use our water treatment plant had the state of Michigan not decided to switch our water. So there's $70 million missing right off the top. And then out of that, that right around this time, we were settling our pipe replacement lawsuit where the state was going to have to pay $97 million towards pipe replacement. Well, they decided to snatch $40 million of the remaining $100 million to pay for that. And that left $60 million, which then they put towards other programs, MDHHS, this and that, and all that. And then they said, well, you can have about $30 million, but you have to use it to replace water meters, which, by the way, our water meters had just been replaced in 2015. So, and those were plastic, which, of course, kind of junky, but they were plastic. The ones they replaced them with have leaded brass fittings. So they just paid to put lead back in our homes.
Governor Snyder was given the money, and when you were mayor, did he and others make efforts to get you to come out and say the water was safe?
All the time.
In exchange, and if you say this, maybe we'll give you a little more money.
They tried to get me to say it all of the time. The first money that we heard about, and I was in D.C., I was at U.S. Conference of Mayors, and President Obama was meeting with the mayors, and he made the statement that at that point we were getting $80 million for infrastructure, and it got held up at the state. Because a lot of the money, they wanted to use some of it for Flint, but they wanted to use it for other projects around the state. That was what was going on as well. But they constantly tried to get me to say the water was fine. That was the big fight.
The city versus the state.
Do you trust the governor?
You know what? It's always, what is it? Trust but verify.
I believe the media is complicit in this. Yes. Because a community could only be left to die slowly if the people that are supposed to be exposing it are asleep at the switch. What is the media's role in this still being a crisis 10 years later?
So the media, especially the national media, has been a double-edged sword. We're seeing all of it and living all of it every single day. And we have been in this prison sentence, in this death sentence for 10 years and counting, because nobody will listen to us, nobody will cover us. We just had a federal judge agree with us and hold the city of Flint in contempt, in civil contempt of federal court, which is huge. That's so rare that it happened. And everything that we were saying, the judge said, everything the plaintiffs have said is correct. They have not put in the effort, the will to finish this, and they have violated the settlement agreement to replace the pipes. So I was expecting my phone to blow up like it normally would, and I was ready with my statement. Hardly anyone did. And then I'm seeing basically like some of the state radio stations and local radio stations and news stations just repeating and regurgitating, like you said, the city's press release with their excuse. Nothing from us, nothing from the people, not interviewing or talking to residents. It's horrifying. So then basically all the people are going to see is they were held in contempt, and then the city saying, oh no, we're fine, we didn't do anything wrong, even though the judge said they did. But how many people are going to go in and read the 30-page judge's, the court order? But Flint and so many other communities like Flint are dying at the hands of these corporations and these governments, and everybody would rather talk about who's wearing what fashion and where's Kate Middleton and where's her ring and this photo editing controversy. I'm like, we're dying. Hello?
Trump's tweets or Truth Socials.
Oh my God, we all know it's madness, so why are you covering it? If you stop giving him attention like we do with toddlers, then maybe he'll go away, because that's what's happening to us. They're no longer giving us attention, so we're dying quieter and not by choice.
Why isn't the media, the whole United States, isn't there somebody out there besides you? Isn't there enough people dying for a political gain? Not from us. We are dying. You guys are next. Why don't you stand up, man? Stand up. You got it. I'm serious.
Once you get outside of the city of Flint, I don't think that the local media has really even kept up with any important news stories except for the most. You will see when there is a salacious story, the local news outlet may jump on it, or like sort of the Detroit, Lansing news outlets may jump on that, but often it's very cynical. Often it favors, I think, in my opinion, often those narratives favor the defendants that are involved. I don't think that that coverage is often very much in the interest of Flint residents. It's often, I'm an outsider, here's what I think is important about the Flint water crisis, not what are Flint residents concerned about, what are the things that they think are concerning. And oftentimes you'll see in those articles, they don't even really interview a resident. So.
Right. And I think, as we both know, there's a difference between checking a box and saying, hey, we sent a reporter to cover a protest, and actually investigating who knew what when. And that's what I think has been lacking, the actual investigative reporting, sure, lack of resources at a lot of outlets. But I'll tell you, I'm not even from Michigan, and I've been able to uncover things that residents were handing over to local outlets that they just didn't want to look into, it seemed.
Yeah, I would say like overall, there's very much been like a lack of interest in either investigating or just looking beyond whatever like the official narrative is, or the quotes in the press release that the reporter gets. There's, just it seems to me, in my opinion, in my observation, just sort of like a lack of interest in really understanding anything deeper beyond like the basic, like, here's what the governor says happened. And you see that over and over again for years and years. We've seen it starting in 2016 and continuing through now.
So Jen has put together handy dandy, very, very easy to digest, almost like a book report here on our recent story that has the top bullets, phones belonging to top officials close to Governor Snyder, including his press secretary, were erased in 2015, shortly before the launch of the Flint criminal investigation. We're in front of the Journal, and we're going to go talk to the Journal and make sure they know about it, and maybe ask why they can't find the time to talk about this. I'm going to speak with an editor or a manager here, or reporters. We wanted to make sure they knew about an important story. Okay, what do you got? We broke this a few weeks ago. I'm pretty sure the Flint Journal knows about it. We broke it in the Detroit Metro Times and the Intercept on Governor Rick Snyder's administration. Their phones were deleted right before the launch of a criminal investigation. Health officials' phones had no messages on them. Okay. The governor refused to hand over key documents. I mean, to be honestly, I know you guys know about it. I don't know why you're not reporting it. But also, the governor's top advisor was interfering in the investigation. Congress has responded to this story. They say they're investigating it, but the Flint Journal, interestingly enough, has not reported it. I don't know why. We also broke last year that the governor's top advisor was going around Flint offering payoffs to residents. The Flint Journal didn't report that either. I'm sure you're a good fella, but I think the Flint Journal should inform residents about these things. None of the facts have been disputed. Rashida Tlaib, as you know, she spoke out on this. Michael Morris spoke out on this. Ro Khanna, the congressman, has spoken out about this. Erin Brockovich actually said, this is the biggest cover-up you'll ever read.
A big part of the story that has been lost has been the private companies that came in either before the water crisis started, before the switch ever happened, or the ones that came in after, who had sort of a plan or a motive or a goal to actually profit in some way, in different ways often, on the water, on Flint's water system, or on Flint's water rights, et cetera, et cetera.
The battle over Genesee County, where they're getting their water, is continuing. This time the state is giving the county the green light to join the Carignan Water Authority. Detroit water officials are not happy about this latest development.
The state treasurer is supporting the city and the county's plan to join the KWA by approving a $50,000 contract. Now, Detroit water officials have until Monday night to come up with a counter offer. Jeff Wright, the head of the Genesee County Drain Commission, says help is on the way if the city joins the KWA. That's why he's happy to hear the state is backing the city's new water plan.
The idea that Detroit was actually offering what were likely much lower rates, especially as Flint was threatening to leave the Detroit system, And kind of contrasted with the fact that Flint was being encouraged to join and pay for this brand new, very expensive water system is one of the biggest discrepancies of the water crisis and of the kind of narratives that have kind of grown out around the water crisis.
Back in 2013, state-appointed emergency manager Ed Kurtz decided Flint could save money if it quit Detroit's water and joined the new pipeline. Kurtz and Wright, the drain commissioner, issued a joint statement back then saying there'd be, quote, no looking back. But where would Flint now get its water until the pipeline was ready? Kurtz decided on the Flint River.
Let's just talk about like your used car salesman, spitting you a bunch of BS to get you to buy the car. He's saying, the wheels are made of gold when they're really made of rubber, right? Well, Flint, again, by law, because it was under emergency management, anything over $50,000 had to get the approval of the state treasurer. So if Flint wanted to spend over $50,000, it had to get the state's permission. Well, by law, because Flint was broke, it had already reached its borrowing limit. Legally, it could not borrow any more money unless there was some type of emergency. Well, the people that wanted this brand new water system basically created an emergency to allow Flint to borrow that money.
The way the KWA is structured and the way the bond for the KWA is structured, Flint had to take on a percentage of responsibility for that bond, both in payment, but also, right, like you said, sort of a city can only borrow so much money. Flint is not allowed to borrow money because it's past its debt limit. One way that it could be allowed to borrow money would be to get in a consent order,
i.e. create an emergency.
Create an emergency or find an emergency, something to that effect. So that is understood, and you can see in email conversations from early, the fall of 2013, you can see these conversations happening. And again, they're being driven by outside lawyer, outside financial advisor. And then they start to say, okay, so what is an emergency we could use? And it turns out Flint has this toxic dump north of the treatment plant. It existed for 30 years. It had not been, there'd been no pressure for the city to fix it at that point. But come fall of 2013, as people are looking for an excuse or a way that Flint can borrow money, suddenly that dump is brought into the conversation.
So the environmental department writes an environmental order for Flint to clean up that lime pit. That will only cost a couple $1,000,000. Not cheap, but not super expensive. But in that order to clean up the lime pit, through the back door, the people that orchestrated this fraud allowed Flint to borrow nearly $100 million to help finance this brand new water system. The water system would cost about nearly $300 million, and Flint's portion for Flint to join the water system would be nearly $100 million. So technically the environmental order was for this relatively inexpensive lime pit, but within it, Flint's allowed to borrow $100 million. And who issued the bonds? Who underwrote the bonds? Our friends on Wall Street, JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and Stifel, Nicholas & Co. In 2020, all three banks were sued civilly on behalf of 2,600 poisoned Flint children. Another important element of the allegedly fraudulent bullshit bond order and environmental agreement was a clause that mandated the city of Flint to use its dilapidated, rickety water treatment plant and its long polluted Flint River as its temporary drinking water source for the 2-year period that the KWA pipeline was to be constructed. They were supposed to be making significant upgrades to the water plant before they switched to the Flint River.
Yeah.
Basically, the emergency manager and other officials were basically making it like, you know what, we'll just put the passengers on the boat and build the extra parts as we're sailing.
Yeah.
They did not have basically tens of millions of dollars in upgrades that they were supposed to make to the water plant. They did not make them before the water switch. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. So you have something like the ozone system, which is an important part for disinfection. I mean, just like days before the switch, they're talking about when these parts for that system are going to come in. So the parts for that system aren't in. And so that system, when they make that switch in April 2014, the ozone system is not working. It hasn't even been worked on, really. So, you know, there's these very obvious things that are happening where...
And was that push from the emergency manager, from the state, get that sucker up and running, because we're switching, was the rush to switch to the Flint River at all tied to the bonds and the KWA bonds?
Based on my reporting, I mean, yeah, I mean, there's things that are written into the bonds that put, you know, they very clearly say Flint is going to be when Flint is going to be drawing water from the river from. And that is, you know, those sort of deadlines and metrics that are put into the bond that do have to be followed. So I think the way that financing was structured put deadlines in place that the emergency managers and that the city and local officials that they had to hit. And so when you get to that rush to switch to the river, I think absolutely.
In America, for years, in a lot of presidential races, particularly now, we hear so much about democracy is on the line. I don't want to get into Trump or any of that, but democracy on the line, you know how it goes. You get the fundraising emails and we got to save our democracy and there's threats and this and that. Well, what a lot of people outside of Flint and Michigan perhaps don't truly know is this crisis was caused by an attack on democracy. Arguably, there was no need to declare a financial emergency, which is what then Governor Snyder, who ran for governor on running government like a business.
Right. And it was time to bring in experience from the private sector, from the business world, and blend that with the public sector to say there's a new, better way of doing things in our state.
Which many Republicans like to do. He declared a financial emergency, and as part of that, he appointed several in a row unelected emergency managers who were basically like czars.
Correct.
They were able to supersede the power of, at the time, your predecessor, Mayor Dane Walling, the elected city council, and I believe were essentially just proxies for Governor Snyder carrying out his desires.
All right, let's cue the Michigan tape. If you live in Michigan and your town goes broke, the state of Michigan has the option to come in and take over your town or your school district, right? The state abolishes your local democracy. So it doesn't matter who you voted for, whoever you voted for, that gets overruled. And instead, they give you a single state-appointed overseer. The new unelected boss can do whatever he or she wants, no matter what you vote for. That overseer can fire the elected officials, stop paying them. The emergency manager gets full control personally. Full stop. A local website called Eclectablog has been cataloging the way Michigan Republicans do this uprooting of democracy in their state. Eclectablog noticed that if you consider the racial makeup of Michigan and the racial makeup of the towns that Michigan has taken over, little towns like Allen Park and Benton Harbor and Ecorse, and larger towns like Pontiac and also Flint. If you then add in Detroit, which the state has long been on the verge of taking over, what emerges from the stats is that Michigan has been on the verge of eliminating local democracy, the meaningful right to vote for your local officials. It has been on the verge of eliminating that for almost half the black population of the state, something like 49% of Michigan African Americans.
This came up on the ballot before, and we wanted to do away with that. Voted for it. And what happened? Emergency managers were put in place anyway. Somehow a loophole was found. And so it meant that our voice and our vote didn't matter.
So the people voted against the emergency manager.
But we got emergency managers. I remember, it's interesting because I remember I was working on someone's campaign, running for mayor. And Snyder called and said that there was going to be a state takeover that night. It was election night, but he was going to wait until after the polls closed because he wanted the people's voices to be heard. Shoot, I don't know if it was 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock. It was breaking news that the city of Flint was being taken over. So how is that letting the people's voices be heard?
There's breaking news out of Flint, where Governor Rick Snyder has appointed Mike Brown to succeed Ed Kurtz as emergency manager in the city.
They were taking resources away from Flint. I believe on purpose. I believe, and many of us do, that they were looking to do a different form of government in the city of Flint and go to a management form of government. And so all of the resources, all of our assets were being given away. I mean, sold for dollars, those kinds of things. And so we didn't have any of our own things to depend on. The things, I mean, think about it. Our airport had been gone for some years now. Who gets rid of water? I mean, that was our main source of revenue. Who does that? And I remember saying that at a KWA board meeting. Who thought that made sense? We go from selling water to buying it and paying 8 times the national
Flint
average.
was receiving water from Detroit
Right.
and then resold some of it to other
to
places.
the county.
Yeah.
Right. So the rest of the county purchased water from Flint. So why would we say, well, you know what? We don't want to do that anymore. We want to buy the water we used to sell. I mean, it doesn't even make sense. But I do think it was part of a bigger picture for what they wanted to do in Detroit, because we were Detroit's largest customer. So let's bankrupt Detroit by taking away their largest customer, and then let's bankrupt Flint by taking their financial resource away from them. And it was interesting because as mayor, the mayor of the city of Flint is, well, at least it had been, the chair of the KWA board.
Through my research and reporting, it doesn't seem this was about saving money. It seems like
No.
this was about making money.
It was about making money.
So, common sense, Flint for 50 years had received treated water. That just means the water is ready for consumption. From Detroit, no issues. And Detroit was raising its rates.
Right.
So there was price problems, price issues.
Right,
where Flint,
and that was our first issue.
Right, Flint wanted a cheaper rate, but Flint was Detroit's largest customer.
Correct.
So there were, you know, some folks on the ground here, local officials, borderline motives, that wanted to create a brand new water system for Flint to join, called the Carigandi Water Authority. They said it wasn't privatized, but by all intents and purposes, it was privatized.
Right.
So last minute, Detroit, so that they don't lose Flint, offers to cut their rate to Flint by 48%. We have the emails. We have the evidence. I don't know if, I'm not the mayor, but if the city's main concern is they're paying too much for water and you're basically getting a half-off discount, oh, that's great.
That's great. If I had been in that role on KWA, I would have been privy to certain meetings. But because I was not put in that position that the previous mayor had been put in, I wasn't part of those other meetings, those executive meetings. So when you held an office on the board, you were in the executive meeting. So I wasn't privy to any of that information.
It's interesting that your predecessor, the white mayor, was on the board of KWA, board chair.
Board chair.
But when you came in, they did not make you board chair.
Right.
The only difference besides your color was you were critical of KWA, so they basically locked you out of the discussion.
Exactly. I was locked out of the discussion.
Let's talk about 6 months after the water switch, the state of Michigan, the governor, even officials on the ground here, they knew, they heard, they saw residents bringing jugs of brown water to city council meetings. Residents are getting rashes. There's media stories. Now, there was an official within the governor's office, a whistleblower, we could call it. Her name was Valerie Brader. She was a top advisor to the governor and one of the governor's lawyers. She sent an email to the governor's chief of staff and other officials calling it urgent. We need to switch Flint back to Detroit's water system. She cited the contamination in the water, including E. coli, TTHMs, which are cancer-causing chemicals. And she called it an urgent problem to fix.
We see these conversations kind of building throughout 2014 and up until January 2015 about what they're going to do, what state officials, what they know, what city officials know, what they're learning, what kind of panic is ensuing. And, you know, definitely by January 2015, you get to this point where they're kind of actively looking at what could Flint switch back to the Detroit water system? What would that look like? How much would it cost? And you very quickly see in these conversations the emergency managers talking about how expensive, it would be too expensive to switch back. It would be too expensive for Flint to switch to Detroit. They should just wait it out until the new water system is ready. And
there was actually an email, which I couldn't believe it when I read it. The chief of staff to Governor Snyder at the time, Dennis Muchmore, said, we can make the river water safe.
Right.
we can make the river water safe, meaning they weren't 100% confident at the time that the river water was safe.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Despite telling the residents everything's fine.
I don't know what planet these people are living on. They're like, oh, well, post-water crisis. I'm like, when is that? When is that? Because I've heard this. They're like, oh, well, after the water crisis or after the height of the water crisis. I mean, it's still going on. People are still being harmed. That is a crisis. That is a public health crisis. That is just wrong. People are still being harmed by decisions that were made by our government and by people who are profiting off of us to allow us to bathe, drink in, cook with, make coffee with, feed our pets toxic water. How is that post? I mean, if they think it's post-water crisis, well, show me where all the pipes have been replaced in the streets, in our yards, in our homes. Where's the new fixtures, faucets, and all that stuff? And where's the money people can use for therapy and tutors to go recover? Where's that at? Where are the healthy people? You know, because it's not here. It's not in Flint.
And how many kids do you have living here?
2.
So this one we've seen, it's basically like white splotches. Can we see this one again? And what about the other one? Has the other kid had these problems too?
Actually, no. His lead levels is at a 4. I haven't got her lead levels checked yet, but I'm working on going tomorrow and get it checked.
With the other child, did you live in Flint before with him?
Yes, I actually lived on Carr Street when they started saying that the water was messed up.
Carr Street?
Mm-hmm. The car on where the apartments is, right there.
Okay. Okay, so he had previous consumption of the water when they switched the water?
Yeah.
Okay. And has your, you said you have sickle cell. Has it gotten worse since you moved into this home?
It's gotten worse since the water been messed up. When we was running out of water and I didn't have a car, I was drinking water out of the faucet.
And now what choice do you have if they shut down the water stations where you can get free water?
I still drink out the faucet water.
Yeah. Do you have a filter at least on it?
Yeah, a Brita. But when I talked to 211, they basically said it's okay to drink it.
Have you had any problems health-wise since the water switch?
Itching, breaking down, stuff like that.
My teeth. Yeah, so.
Then I've had pneumonia.
Our skin and our hair. I've been getting a lot of boils.
Go ahead, get it. Bro, I'm telling you. And I get them like, just bro. And they were worse.
My daughter did have a miscarriage.
He was at Heritage Manor, went to McLaren where they had the Legionnaires. My father is dead.
She didn't have any of this before you moved in here.
She had clear skin. Nothing was on her body, nothing. Like even scratches coming across her face. She was like, no.
In 2021, more than 12 million American adults thought about suicide. 1.7 million attempted it. The youth mental health crisis is overwhelming emergency rooms. Nearly 60% of high school girls reported persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness.
Matthew, 11th chapter, and the 29th verse.
What really concerns me just this last year, and I know there are other years, is that the young people, and when I say teenagers and children, that are committing suicide. I mean Vibrant, one of the youth organizations that they have for young men and young women to help build character and to help to build them. This young man committed suicide. Vibrant, smart, on his way to college. And he committed suicide.
7,000 children in Flint were damaged by the water, 7,000.
And not talking about the ones that fall in the category of my grandson, that he was supposed to be an academic ambassador to go to Washington in 2014 and 15. And by the time 2015 got here, he was no longer an AB student, but a DEF student. So who could he go represent for the third grade? Nobody. Not only was he a DEF student, but he was fragile. that his mental capacity was not what it was. He couldn't sit and read a book for 20 minutes any longer. 5 minutes, maybe, or be unrest or just get up. That could not take directions, that if you gave him a directive. And that's what's wrong with the young folks now. And I had to tell the sheriff that if you stop a person in Flint or Genesee County, you cannot give them 3 or 4 directives at one time. You have to give them to them one at a time because they cannot process it. The ability to process directions is not what it used to be because you have to give it to them one at a time and they have to process that. And so if you say, stop, take your hands off the wheel, don't touch it, it's just a lot of mumbo jumbo to them, and so they cannot process it.
You have a massive government cover-up here, and 10 years later, not one person, not one government official has faced a jury. But if no one is above the law, how in America, a decade later, forget in jail, no one has faced trial over the poisoning of 100,000 Americans? What does that say to you?
I mean, how do you explain that? How do you explain that? Some people must be above the law because you couldn't do a crime like this. You couldn't do this and get away with it. And you couldn't pull it off single-handedly. You just can't. And for no one, like you said, no one, not even the people that are normally thrown under the bus, no one has been punished for this other than the people. Other than the people.
Many of you have heard my story, but for the ones who haven't, this water crisis has had a major impact on me and my children. I was pregnant in 2015 with twins, and I lost both of my babies due to drinking this contaminated water. I was getting mail out of my mailbox, and I received something from the city of Flint stating that pregnant women and people 55 and over should not be drinking the Flint tap water.
When was this? What month?
This was in June. I'd say, well, probably July, because I had my miscarriage June the 30th.
We have, 100,000 people that have been immunocompromised, immunosuppressed, and immuno-altered. Their immune systems now act in a different way. Like mine, if there's an invader, mine attacks me. And so I can't fight off anything. And my kids, like my youngest, his white blood cell count has hovered below 4. And there's nothing you can eat or take that brings that back up. So he gets sick at the drop of a hat.
And my daughter, she showers every day, and she happens to be someone who has asthma. Now, I don't know if a lot of people realize asthma causes your body to have a low immune system. Well, when she goes and takes a shower, every day I have to give her a Benadryl because her whole body breaks out in an allergic reaction.
No parent will want to go through what you've been going through. I guess we could talk about your son that still lives here. He was, when the water switch happened, about
14, 15.
About 14 or 15 when the water switch happened?
Oh, was it? Yeah. Well, I think he was a little younger because they didn't declare it.
How old is he now?
25.
So he was 15 in 2014 when they switched the water.
Yeah.
So tell me, before that, he was...
Oh, he was an outgoing kid. He had lots of friends. All the girls liked him. He didn't show any issues like that, But almost like right in time with the water switch, within them couple of years, he's gone into a depression. And he's 25, and he's still in this depression, deeper than ever. He's anorexic, agoraphobic. He suffers from OCD. And a lot of it, of the OCD kind of thing started with the water because he's scared to drink the water, because we're all like, yeah, don't drink the water, it's gonna kill you. All this kind of thing that kind of gave him a fear of the water, and not just the water, but everything else on earth. Can't get him to take medicine. He's scared to take medicine. He's scared to eat different kinds of foods. That's why he's now anorexic, weighs 100 pounds, 5'8", 25 years old.
He's 25 and weighs 100 pounds?
Yes. When I say anorexic, that's what I mean. And there's no programs here for it, only for kids. And right when he was, I think they had one that was going to, that went up to like 23 years old, but they wouldn't accept him because he was already 22, going to be 23, so they wouldn't accept him into the program. So now he's about to be 26 this year, and still there's no programs out here. Can't get Social Security for him. They swear there's nothing wrong with him, but I can't get him to come out of the house. I can't get him to barely come out of the room or to talk to anyone. And he is also suicidal. He's ideation.
Yeah, suicidal ideation.
Yes. And when you have a conversation, it comes up. And they also said that he's got something about a personality disorder. It's like he's not dumb at all. And I hate that he feels that way about himself. But it's kind of like he's still a kid, and I'm constantly having to tell him things. And I give him advice, but he thinks I'm being mean, and I don't know. He doesn't act like a 25-year-old that I've ever met.
Jennifer Rivera is a preschool teacher in Flint. She describes her 4-year-olds as low income, high risk.
Thank you for my family.
Well, it breaks my heart because they already have a struggle. Everything is a struggle for them already. What do we do with this?
Now she watches closely every day for signs of lead poisoning.
I've noticed the speech, the articulation, and I've noticed behaviors of anger.
Right now, Flint is getting a lot of attention. Right now, these kids are getting a lot of attention. But this is the insidious part about lead exposure. The symptoms may not show in the weeks to come or even the months to come. It could take years. And every single one of these children will have to be tracked their entire childhoods.
Lead and other heavy metals impacts the part of your brain that regulates your emotions and basically using logic when you make decisions. So we've had a lot of people making snap decisions because they're angry, and that's increasing with violence, people getting into fights, people shooting each other just because somebody looked at them wrong. And then, teens and young adults, because I've had a few friends that have were at a concert, everything was fine, and he hung himself outside of his school. Or I had another friend that was doing great and things weren't going so well, and he shot himself in his new apartment.
Exposed children are at risk for a number of problems, including lower IQ scores, developmental delays, and behavioral issues such as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Even after lead exposure stops, the effects can last for years or even be permanent.
Youth who are trying to grow up and they can't learn right, or they can't learn different. They're learning in a different way. And my kids with their behaviors, it's hard. And I'm trained, and I still don't know, is this normal teenage stuff? Is this water stuff? Is it trauma stuff? What is it? Every time I'm sick, I'm like, is this normal people sick? Am I just getting old, or is this water sick? What kind of doctor do I see? And there's so many questions, you just stop. Especially since most of us are diagnosed in some way now of being neurodivergent, ADHD, or on the spectrum, somewhere in between the trauma, the PTSD, everything. It's hard to see an end to it, especially when they're already saying it's over, but yet what we're living in, seeing, feeling, breathing is not even close to over.
They say that just the smallest amount of lead will affect your brain and.
He was 11 years old.
Yes.
And he's drinking and bathing in lead, bacteria, PFAS.
Yeah.
How old is he now?
21.
So this happened when he was 11. So everything is still forming, your brain, your muscles, everything.
Absolutely.
So before the water switch, your son who's now in prison, what was he like? Was he well behaved?
He was very well behaved. He went to school every day. He had lots of friends. He helped my neighbor out next door who is older and handicapped, and he would take her dog out for a walk every day, 3-4 times a day. You know, how often a dog has to use the bathroom. And so he was doing that for her, and he would ride with her to the grocery store and help her grocery shop and bring the groceries in and put them in the cupboard. And And you know, he always did that for me too here at home. And he was just he was smart. He had, like, if I sat too long, he made sure that he was at school on time. You know what I'm saying? He would be on me about, Mom, let's hurry up and get home because I got homework to do. And then to go from that to all these other things, I couldn't understand it, and I still can't. And all I can think of is that it had to be the water. It had to be the water. There was a water crisis. The water was bad. Not only the water is bad, but then the school started being affected. You know, and I just feel like it was like all of these things that helped him get to where he was at, or where he's at. You know, my son was had some friends, and one of the friends had a gun that his father had given him, and that gun was put up in the closet. And his father had passed away, so I guess that gun was, you know, being left to him. But Diaz felt like he wanted to have it, so
That's your son,
yeah,
Diaz.
that's my son. And so he, you know, they say he went and stole it from him, from the kid. And so the kids came up to the school some time later and tried to jump him at the school for the gun. And so Diaz, he ran out of the school trying to get away from these kids, and he ended up shooting back up at the school. Nothing about that was a good situation, you know. It was a bad decision, of course, on my son's part.
For a very long time in this country, we've been trying to figure out why we saw crime increase so rapidly between about the 1960s to the early 1990s. And Kevin Drum from Mother Jones wrote this unbelievable article about how lead could have possibly played a role in violence and crime in this country. He started realizing that there was a correlation between lead in the environment and violent crime. In fact, let's take a quick look at this, you know, U-shaped graph, and it shows you how with the increase of lead in the environment, you saw an increase of crime.
Somebody sends me a newspaper article. I'm standing in the ER with my daughter because she's throwing up her head off, not knowing that she was pregnant. We couldn't figure out what was wrong with her, and we found out what was wrong with her. But while we were standing there in line waiting to be seen, somebody sent me an article that spoke on someone with my son's name, that they were looking for him because he had shot and killed someone and critically injured another person. And of course, I didn't think it was my son. I was like, oh, that ain't, yeah, he's down in Massachusetts working, you know. And we find out that, I had the police come to my house, and they tell me, you know, he's being looked for this murder and attempted murder. And I'm never gonna see my baby again, and they're never gonna see their loved ones again. And I don't know how to deal with that. And like you said, just like the water crisis, you know, it kind of puts you in like a shock mode, or you shut down and you just kind of walk around like a zombie. Well, that's how I feel. You know, I got 3 kids, and I just feel like the water crisis, on top of all the other crises that the water crisis caused, I feel like the housing crisis, the school crisis, you know. I just live every day, and I just try to make sure everybody else is okay, but I go crazy inside, you know.
Well, could environmental hazards, say lead poisoning, lead to shorter prison sentences?
There's a Supreme Court ruling calling mandatory life without parole sentences for juveniles unconstitutional, and it's opening the window. On your sides, Ken Amaro found a Jacksonville attorney who says lead poisoning may have played a role in her client's crime, Ken.
That's correct, Anthony. Attorneys come here at the courthouse, and they usually argue that sex abuse, child abuse, and even poverty are reasons why a juvenile may behave badly. It's all called part of the mitigation package. That is reasoning given to prosecutors so they can have a fuller understanding of the client before sentencing. Well, now environmental hazards like lead poisoning is being included in that package.
Did they take into consideration that he was a Flint kid that consumed that toxic water and maybe it affected his behavior?
Not one word of that was mentioned during his sentencing.
Stuff right here was all over her face. Her ears even had tore up in the inside real bad on both sides.
Yeah, it looks like a mix of blisters and
she actually was peeling nails, so.
we'll stay on it. I'm sorry this is happening to you.
I'm just like, I don't know what to do. I'm devastated. I really just want to go to the city and just go off. Like, I cry every day because my baby's skin break out. And I feel like that's just not right. They shouldn't have to go through this. These babies don't deserve that. And then y'all stop the water giving out. Why? That wasn't even a smart situation to do. But hey, y'all think it's good? More power to y'all, because it's infecting every kid around here. My son went from knowing everything to just having to repeat himself several times to understand what I'm saying. And it's frustrating when you know you sit and you work hard with your kids and they forget stuff. But the city don't care. Or they worried about stopping the water, getting new police cars, helicopters and stuff like that, when y'all need to be worried about these babies out here who parents can't get to water, or y'all trying to make it every 2 days we can get water. I don't have a vehicle to go get water, so once I run out, I'm back to drinking this water. Or my kids back in this water. I done called 211 several times to see if I can get water, and I can't get help. I was even willing to call CPS on myself so that I can get help with water back and forth.
I don't understand why you can't give us the latest testing data and what it shows for the water in Flint. What is the number?
I don't have the number at the top of my head of the very latest data. And it varies by parts of the city.
I would think that the governor of Michigan would have those numbers at the top of his mind right now. Do you know how many children have been injured?
No, not specifically.
Flint, Michigan has been without clean water since April 24th, 2014. 8,657 kids under age 6 were exposed to lead.
Ten years later, something that has not gotten national attention, Flint has one of the fastest rising cancer rates in America. The few news headlines I've seen have wondered, could it be the water? I mean, it doesn't take a rocket science to understand why a major city would have significant cancer rates if it's if the residents consumed contaminated water for several years.
If you don't have those people that are in power, you don't hear them asking for these things for Flint. You don't hear them fighting for Flint and saying Flint has not been given what they deserve. You don't hear anybody saying that. And one of the things we always talked about, we said this is because of race and class, and you can't tell us anything differently. Can't tell us anything differently.
I gotta go out there and speak to the guys that are laying in the damn streets that are saying, what the fuck you do to me? What'd you do to my kids? How come my kid ain't never gonna learn anything unless I take him to special schools that you won't afford to pay? You won't even give my mom medical care that she needs. And they didn't do it in Benton Harbor and Detroit, and they didn't do it in Bloomfield Hills, or they didn't do it in Auburn Hills or any of that. They did it right here in Flint. And so when you say deliverance, okay, deliverance is when you know that you are not supposed to do something and you go ahead and do it anyway because you stand to make money. That's deliverance, and that's what happened here in the city of Flint. Eric Mays, Tony Palladino, Clara Moore, Tony Morales. All of them succumbed to this. And that's why I'm still fighting the way that I am, because the people that don't have the medical care and don't have a fucking voice found their voice in Eric Mays and found their voice in other people. And now when all of these people, Tony and everybody, Palladino and Vicky and Clara Moore and Lori Carter.
You've lost a lot of people.
And it's not because they decided that they didn't want to live in Flint. They just want to live with fucked up water. But they had no choice. They couldn't leave. That's the deal. It's like setting fire to a fucking building and chaining the fucking doors to the people that are in there trying to get out. That's why I'm here. Standing in the rain, talking to my friend.
Give me your past, give me your present, give me your night sky.
We've been tormented for 5 years. 5 years we've been tormented with dirty, nasty, unsafe, unhealthy water. The ponds are not open anymore because they say the water is fixed. But if it's fixed, tell me where it's fixed. If it's fixed, tell me who fixed it. If it's fixed, tell me when they fixed it.
It is not over. It's not a joke. It's not funny. The water is dirty.
44 years old. She died an absolutely horrible death because they lied to her about the water. Her skin was torn off of her body. Justice needs to be done for the Flint residents, and it needs to be done now.
I see dead GM workers and my sisters and my family.
I took him to McLaren. I trusted the hospital. I made the biggest mistake in my life. They said he had an unusual pneumonia. The bacteria is eating up all his red blood cells. And even when he was dying, I was trying to bathe him and scrub him in the same water that was ripping his life out.
I give you honesty and loyalty. I give you consistent.
My father, Joseph Clement, may he rest in complete power, was a victim of the water crisis. My father's body was riddled with cancer. She had her breast removed, and then they ended up taking her stomach.
I lost my daughter's dad, who died from bacterial pneumonia August of 2015 before McLaren and the state decided that it was a Legionnaires bacteria.
My son had gotten really sick and he was on life support. They tested him for everything and they said it wasn't anything, but he was spitting out his insides, and to touch his mouth, blood was just gushing out. They said it looked like it was Legionnaires disease.
Flint water contributed to my mama. She just died in January from kidney failure and a whole bunch of things wrong with her.
It's like Russian roulette. You never know if you're gonna get Legionnaires when you touch that water, take a shower. You just don't know. And, you know, we just want people to know not to drink that water. That water is still not safe to drink. Still, I mean, this is happening today. It's not over. It's never been over. Whoever said it's over is a lie. It is a flat-out lie. Still continuing. 5 years and counting.
This place ain't safe. It's not safe at all. We got a pistol in our mouth every day. It's called tap water.
One of the things I always said was this could have been titled How to Get Away with Murder, because that's what happened. That's what happened. We've been physically killed. We've been mentally and emotionally killed, and left to fend for ourselves at the hands of our government, at the hands of people that many of us had put in place. We were hopeful. We were excited. We thought we had a voice. We thought people would have our back. And they told us we were disposable. That's what they told us. Is that we are disposable people.
You think this will ever be fixed?
No. I don't. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. And that's the sad part. And if it is, many of the people that should have received things won't be here to get them. Many of the children that have been impacted, I mean, their lives have been changed already. So, no, I don't. And it's sad to say, you know, people say, do you trust the water? And I still have to say, no. 10 years later, I don't.